Live on the chat. Coming in here right now, we are super stoked. We've got Max. Max, where are you in the world?
I'm in Barcelona.
Barcelona. Very nice.
Oh yeah.
And we've got Mr. Mike Golden, aka Drokey. How you doing, Droke?
I'm doing wonderful, my friend. Doing wonderful.
And you are coming to us live from your home experience.
Yes, indeed. Portland, Maine. Got the baby, I think, sleeping in the other room.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll be as quiet as we can. And then we
keep it down.
We don't have on camera because of some very cool reasons. We have Marc Simonetti though. How are you, Marc?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I don't have any headset, so I've got my Oculus Rift right now on my face. So I look absolutely stupid, so I prefer not to show anything.
Some of us just have to walk around looking absolutely stupid. So, you're one step ahead of us. At least it required a little bit of AI to accomplish it.
Well, outstanding. I think we can do... Well, thinking about this, maybe what we do, Drokey, is we screen share with you and take a look at some stuff from your screen.
And I think this is a good kit to do that for because it's organized a little bit more differently than our other kits, and so that might be helpful.
Oh, thanks. Just a heads up, I'm looking at a black screen on the stream right now. I don't know if that's.
I see.
Oh, I think that might be when Mark talks. It comes up with just the Google Android character guy.
Maybe that's it. Okay. Well, either way, I don't think the video chat's centered. So you might need to.
I think you're right about that, Maximilian. How about that? I think we might have changed it. It's so lit in the house. What up? Thank you for joining us, coming on down and hanging out. Today is a very special day for us as we have just launched. As many of you know, the Roman Empire kit, and we've got Marc Simonetti on the line here with us, who made the cover art for it, and he's going to be talking us through some of the things that he's done with it.
But before we jump into the cover, let's take a look at the kit, because this is kind of the first time that anyone gets to see it. We'll take a look at the 3D, and then hopefully jump in with Marc and see if he can share his screen possibly and show us his process, because I'm really curious to see how you use the kit, Marc, and how you go about painting and just your process in general.
Okay, let's do that. Okay.
Fantastic.
What up, JD?
Mike, do you want to share your screen first, and we'll take a look at the kit?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see.
Let's do that. Oh, here we go.
And let me know if you guys are seeing my 3ds Max screen.
Oh, we're seeing it.
Oh, yeah. This kit, Max and I have gotten to see this kit for a while now as McCall is working on it. McCall, it turns out, is way into the Roman Empire. And this part of history, but also this part of architecture. And so it came out with this just amazing kit that has all the essential iconic buildings of Rome, ancient Rome. From the original Circus Maximus to obviously the Colosseum. I've been going through Maximus Decimus Meridius quotes in my head all day long.
What we do.
And then obviously, are you not entertained? Obviously, we got the Pantheon in there, and just as I was going through and creating, some quick grabs for the product shots and everything else, the repetition that you see in Roman architecture with the columns and the arches and everything else, just kind of naturally beautify your compositions. I feel that kind of classic rule of if you want to show depth and scale, make sure there's something that recedes into the distance consistently, whether that's people, vehicles, whatever it might be. And so it naturally takes care of one of the major rules of composition for you. And we can actually fire up the interactive renderer and actually look at what this thing looks like in real time. So one of the things that's really cool, I think, about this kit, as opposed to condensing all of the meshes down into one, condensing them all down into one mesh, we've left them as instances so that it takes up less VRAM or regular RAM, depending on how you're rendering things, but also so that you can go through, and there's a pretty cool thing that we're going to get to in 1 second once I adjust this tone mapping just a little bit. Make this just a little bit up right there. Go. One of the things that I think is really, really rad is right now you can see we have 3 columns, 3 of like the same columns in here. And in the back, if you look at my actual viewport, you can see we have the high-res versions, which were modeled out in detail and historically accurate and everything else. And so if they're close to the camera, you can put in the full geometry and bada bing, bada bing, bada bing, bada boom, I think is how that one goes. Got it. If you go through and you can put them if they're close to the camera. Now, they're obviously the highest res option that you can use and kind of the most processor intensive. They come in at 10,000 polys or so a piece, which if you put, a couple hundred of them out there very quickly can bog down your scene. And then in the front, you can see we're getting close to the same result with just a normal map, right? We're getting all of that beautiful fluting. We're getting, the segments that actually make up the column and all the cool detail up at the top with, these guys are down to couple thousand polys or barely that. And then there's also, depending on what type of rendering engine you're using, we've also included displacement maps in there. So these ones in the middle that you can see do not have the fluting in them or as much detail up at the top. That is because at the moment I either don't have a displacement modifier on them or it's not turned on. I am known for being so prepared. If we pause this real quick, we can go in and I just placed a simple displacement modifier, which for me is F-Storm. For you, it could be, V-Ray displacement, octane displacement, whatever it might be. And you can displace them and get pretty much the same exact result. So you really have any option you want and any level of detail you want or need for these columns.
Instance, you can switch it over and it'll replace everything in the kit pretty quickly.
It'll do it piece by piece. So if you have a temple real close to you, you can adjust all of those columns together. And then if you have, one of the big temples off in the background, you can do those on their own.
Gotcha.
So this is Ionic. In there.
I think that's one of the big things we tried to focus on when creating a Roman kit, because there's so much repetition in it, is breaking it up into pieces and trying to figure out the best way to package this up so that when you're creating your Roman paintings or your Roman worlds, it's not just getting a column and putting it everywhere, but being able to really optimize your scene and add a ton of complexity without completely destroying it.
Yes, exactly right. And so it's going to take a second here to kind of reboot the geometry for these two guys. But we should see them pop to life here in a second. And bada, there you go. I cannot say that today. I've decided that I'm just going to mispronounce that all day long.
I like it more the way you've done it.
I'm really just going to make you smile, Mr. Banks. So you can do that anywhere. You can also do it for the roof tiles. The roof tiles also have a displacement map. If you're close to the roof and you actually want to see those clay tiles, you can throw displacement on those. So in something like this, where you can see the normal map on them right now in the viewport back behind it, these from this distance have no need for displacement or super high geometry. But if you want to go in and had this, or these had displacement turned on, and maybe the wrong map on them. These are getting double doses. You turn them all off, and that will update in a second. And then we can throw on just the standard. There's kind of 3 ways you can do the materials, whether you want the normal map on it or not, and whether you want. Oh, I turned that off. I'm just working against myself over here. Corinthian column, throw that guy on there. You can either do it all through normal maps, you can do it all through displacement, or you can do it all through geometry, anywhere in the scene. And these guys, as you can see, if you're familiar with 3ds Max, are all instanced. And those that should come through in any software so long as you import the FBX.
That's awesome. Can you take a look at the full kit, just to zoom out so we can see the whole thing?
Absolutely can. Let's get this kind of set up properly.
And I want to jump into the cover here. But before we jump in there, just the overall idea, which I think the cover really nailed, is, when we were designing what the Roman kit wanted to be, one of the things we really wanted was to represent Rome as it was in its glory days, not like the ancient ruins that we see now. We tried to be as historically accurate and capture the actual architecture and the painting and the tiles and the columns in their perfection as they were originally designed and originally displayed. And I think this is, if you wanted to go and destroy this and make it look ruined or look modern, you could pretty quickly with ZBrush or texture maps and stuff like that. But at least this gives you a solid base of Rome to be able to have a lot of flexibility in any direction.
Absolutely. I think you could also probably mix this with the Warzone kit and make some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah, or even throw this underwater for like Atlantis or, heaven, if you want like the Western idea of what heaven looks like with its big pearly gates. Like a perfect kit to be able to use for more fantastical stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I think with that, like the cover that Mark did, I'd love to hear what your idea was, Mark, when you jumped in. And I don't know if you can share your screen and show the cover, but I'd love to hear kind of what your original thoughts were and what your inspiration for the painting was and your thought process.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, right now it is you. Okay. My first thoughts, looking at the models, immediately thought about an anime. I don't know if you say it this way. So I'm gonna take all the mispronunciation on my part if you don't, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, there was an old sorry, for kids, the movies, and it was called Saint Seiya, something like that. So it was all those knights fighting, and it was flying rocks with Greeks and Roman architecture all over it. So this was my first idea, but then I thought it was maybe not really in the theme for the Kit Bash show. So it changed my mind, and I just I wanted to keep that aspect, but try to show everything. So I wanted something very epic, and just. So I tried my best just to show every single building that you made.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But first I built the mountains, and then I placed all the buildings so that we can see all of them. I don't see. You see my screen right now?
Yeah.
So this is I'm working always on gray. So I did first all of these parts there, just to ensure that the background will be amazing. And then I did only this small part. Sorry. So you have to know that I'm not good at all with 3D. I mean, really not good. So I worked in C4D right now, but I started my career in 3ds Max, then Maya, and then Modo, and okay, so basically I know just a little bit of every package, but so...
Mark, I realized we didn't even really introduce you. I'm going to post your link to the chat. You've been working in illustration for like years? Like, how long have you been doing this? What's your background? Because I know you do a lot of book covers, but also film and video games as well, right?
I've been mainly an illustrator for cover art for books for something like 12 years right now. I've counted something like I've made more than 400 cover arts.
Jeez.
Oh, wow.
Many in France, so that's why no one knows them at all, which is fine because the first one really sucks, so it's fine. And then the better I got, the more interesting jobs I got on the side. So it was video games first, and then movies. So right now I'm working half time for movies and video games and half time on cover arts.
Can I ask you a question, Mark?
Yeah, sure.
How was it an intentional choice to get into more like covers and stuff like that? Did it happen naturally? Was that a career choice or kind of a career happenstance? I think that is amazing.
It was a kind of a choice because at first I was not an artist at all. I was just an engineer working in material. I was formulating polymers for frying pans. It was my first job for 2 years. And then I got depressed, so I just picked what I loved most, and what I loved most was the books and drawing. So I started doing fake cover arts for all the books that I loved. And I'm a big book reader, so I start with the Game of Thrones books and Lovecraft and all the stuff, and I send those bad drawings to publishers in France, and I did it this way. So it's pretty cool.
I love that story. This is the thing I want to do. I'm going to start doing it until it actually works out professionally. I want to prove that I can do it before I expect the opportunity to do so.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, that's part of the artistic path. I think is to just create your own path, depending on what you like to do. It's a very cool stuff that you realize just once you're in it.
Yeah. So was the Game of Thrones and the Dune stuff that's on your website, is that personal work that you were just like, I love these series and I want to do a contribution to them?
No, it was commissions by publishers, and so it was those ones are really more recent. So hopefully, almost everything on my website is professional. Almost everything, but because I don't have any more time to do personal stuff at all. So
you started by doing like Game of Thrones covers that you wanted to do, and then you eventually got to do the actual covers for the books.
Exactly. Yeah, that was exactly what happened. When I started, I was not even good enough to do cover art, so I started with collectible card games. And I submitted a lot of fan work about Game of Thrones to Fantasy Flight Games in USA. And I got to do those cards, those collectible cards. And they were all about Game of Thrones. And you have to know that it was super tricky for me at the beginning because I had all the name of the different subjects, but very picky subject because it's a huge collectible card game. So all the subject was super specific, about the book. But I had the book in French, and all the names were completely translated regarding to. So I bought a second edition in English just to be able to understand the names. Because,
oh man, I can't imagine having to translate the names from Game of Thrones. Jesus, there's so many.
Yeah,
I'm surprised they didn't just use them straight. Like, I guess like Brandon, is a.
Yeah, but for example, the name of the town, King's Landing. It's in French. It doesn't mean anything if you just use the name this way. So they translated in something like Port-Réal, which something, it makes sense in a way, but once you have the different translation, then, for example, the werewolves in...
the direwolves?
The direwolves, exactly. So they translated into werewolf, which doesn't mean anything, so in French. So I was expecting them to turn into humans a day or something like that, so it was kind of... But,
yeah. They just went and made it more confusing, basically, because it's
Absolutely, and
all the characters in Game of Thrones aren't, hard enough to keep straight as it is.
exactly, and even the style of the George R. R. Martin is pretty straightforward. It's super simple and super clear and great this way. But they took someone that was making historic French to translate that. So he used all French to translate the book. So it was something.
A challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Mark, in this one, Sons of Dragons, is that the Gothic kit that I spy?
Well, no, it was before, in fact.
Oh yeah,
I made it before. If I had, I would have loved to have the Gothic kit back then. But that's fun because I can see that all the kits are pretty accurate because I use a lot of references from medieval and I spotted the very same references and the very same locations from some of your kits that I bought later on, and some illustration that I made. Something like, because for example, the Dance with Dragons one was made. I made two versions of it. One was made in 2005, and the second one was made 3 years after, so in 2008. So we can see that it's pretty close.
yeah.
That's awesome.
We totally. It's. I think we're looking at all the same references, but we try to get as historically accurate as possible. I'm curious. When I look at your work, especially the illustration stuff, I would never guess in a million years that you use 3D. It just easily.
I don't always use 3D. Basically, that's my main point. In fact, I use it when it's necessary. For example, when I work for movies, I use 3D a lot because you have to do a very fast situation of your work. You have to be super photoreal. So using 3D is kind of mandatory. But for illustration, sometimes you use it, sometimes I just don't. But it's super cool to have those kits just to be able to focus on the very important part of the picture and not spending too much time on everything that is just on the side.
Yeah. I love that it doesn't define your look. You don't look through your ArtStation or your Instagram or your website page and say, like, oh, he did this one in 3D, he did this one all in 2D. Your style comes through regardless of how you get it done. I think you have a very painterly, beautiful quality to your work that comes through regardless of whether it's heavy in 3D or not, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I try to be inspired by all those guys that were doing matte paintings, the very first one, because if you look close enough to their work, you can see so many brush strokes, very big brush strokes, but it's the correct colors at the correct place, so it works and it looks photoreal. It just looks like everything else in the movie. And
I'm trying really hard not to glorify the matte painters on this stream. Really.
I think for me, my mentor Sid Dutton used to say it's the art of the scribble, of knowing how to make a scribble look like it's a photograph when you blur your eyes, and that's what those masters had so down, and just like the impressionist painters as well. Just it's something that I see in your work all the time is how to make a brush stroke say the entire story, and you don't need any more detail than having the right brush stroke in the right place with the right color.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you have to get rid of some of the tropes of the 3D packages because they can if you let a little bit too much by the renderer, then you kind of have all the very same picture as everyone else. You have to trick that to fit it to what you want to use it. For example, for this one, I used Octane to render it, but sometimes I use Keyshot. Sometimes I try to change the package, not to rely on one tool only. So
the best tool for the job at all times. That's awesome.
I try to. Because sometimes, for example, my computer is not powerful enough right now, so I still struggle, and I will change it soon, but they are changing the video cards all the time and the CPU all the time, so I don't know when to buy one, but it's a technical question.
The NVIDIA will be releasing their new one soon. They've just
the Titan V, the V1, the Volta, or the new one.
They're calling it Turing architecture, and they just released they just did a press release on the Pro graphics cards, and so we should see it filter down to the GeForce GTXs. They put up a teaser this morning about it.
Exactly, and today there was just a Sweat Reaper that just was released. For example, the new one for the GPU. This time. So it's kind of I'm not a tech guy at all. I try to buy a PC, and for example, this one is 5 years old, but as you can see that the model is it's cool because I'm pretty sure that most of you guys have very powerful PC. I don't have it's okay for VR, my PC, so it's good enough. But even if people don't have a very, very powerful one, they can use it because the model is really well optimized. That's what I like about it. For example, when you were talking before about the displacement maps, it's very important just to be able to get rid of them and to have a nice result at the end.
Yeah, NVIDIA's gonna wait for Mark to buy his next graphics card before they release the new one. It's gonna happen
there you go.
After. How it has to go. I mean, speaking of that, you use Octane, I assume, with C4D?
Yeah, absolutely. I use Octane, absolutely, and sometimes I use KeyShot too.
Awesome.
It really depends on the subject. Sometimes Octane is not powerful enough. I don't know which. It depends on the mesh that you use. Sometimes I combine, for example, some part of KitBash with some models that I do in Oculus Medium.
Ah, gotcha. Oh, wow. So you're sculpting and building in VR and bringing that into your renders.
Exactly. And for example, I had another one. I'm going to just, I'm going to put that one there. But it was to have those very sharp and detailed model. You can use not as good ones, but made very, very fast. And okay, this one. This one was made, all the architecture and the dragon one was made with Oculus Medium, and I added some parts of the Gothic kit inside, just to add some scene made more sharply, and just it looks like it gives everything else the basics that it needed, the structure.
Is that the same way that you did the terrain for the Roman cover?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But I like
Terrains are such a stumbling point, and yours came out so beautiful. I'm like, he must have some models, or maybe he's just amazing at matte painting. I was looking at the cover when I first saw it, and I'm like, love the terrain and the hillside that you put into it.
Yeah, those ones there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. It's just basically a blob, kind of, made with and then with some texture, you can do anything. But yeah.
Well done. If that's a blob for you, that's a well done blob, my friend.
Thank you very much. That's where it's part of a job, just to try to cheat all the time. Sorry, I'm French. I shouldn't use some of the words that you're using every day.
Well, I think you should just go for it.
Yeah, you're allowed to go.
Full license.
I'm curious how far you take 3D before you decide that you're good with 3D and you want to jump into the 2D. What's the point where you're blocking things in? Do you do shaders? Do you do lighting? Do you do a beauty render or passes? Kind of, where's your stopping point of 3D when you start painting?
I'm going to show it to you because it depends. I really need the lighting is pretty, for me, just using 3D and not using the lighting of the 3D is kind of a missed opportunity, because you can do so many good things with just a good lighting first. So usually I use random or generic shaders. But I like to have the basic shapes done in 3D and the basic lighting. Once I have this I can just do whatever I want. And the good thing also to use with the render is to have I love to have a good path of ambient occlusion, just to help separating different layers and to have all the different buildings and models separated on a new layer. That's just so much time to earn in a very fast way. That yeah, those are my main interests. I'm just gonna try to show you. Yeah. I don't have any dogs, so not mine.
Is that your dog in the background?
No, it's not mine.
That's totally me. We're muting myself over here.
You're gonna wake up the baby.
Oh, this one. Okay. This was my main. I started with this one. No, this one is not. Maybe this one. Yeah, this one. Okay, I started with this for the picture.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Oh my God, the amount of painting work you did to this is amazing, especially on the Blob Mountains.
I don't know. You just have to paste a small photo because everything is already done. So you just have to add some details and to correct the scale of the texture. It's pretty easy. Basically, just like a palette, something you just can pick the color, the corrector at the correct place, and just use just like a text sculpture, just like you would do in 3D. You know, it's pretty fast just to add some. Because you already have the good colors and kind of the good composition. So if you want to add some, some mystery, you can just go like this. I've done a lot of speed painting, so I can just modify pretty. Yeah. Not a big amount of time. I'm sorry about my English. Usually it's better, but I'm all alone. That's why it's better.
No, you're doing awesome. We're following along. We all speak the universal language of love and
blabbing.
So, Marc, you've been
trying to keep up in French. We'd have a much more difficult time. So you're killing it.
Same thing in French. I said badly in French.
Marc, you've done
this. We have a question in the chat from our own Gooch. Chris asks, how much of a book do you have to read to know what you're creating visually? So I guess before you paint a cover of a book, how much of that book do you actually read before you paint the cover?
It really depends on the book. Sometimes it depends mostly on the client because sometimes the book is not out yet, so you can't read it at all. So you have to rely on the clients. And some of the times you already have, for example, if it's another publisher that publishes the same book, then I can read the full book just to be sure of the. Sometimes I read something like the first 5 chapters and then the last 5 chapters to be sure of what I'm doing. No spoils, nothing like that. And sometimes I read the full book, and sometimes the book is awful, so I don't read it at all, and I just try to focus on the general theme. That can happen, because if you start the book and you read the full book and it's just awful, then it's a nightmare to do a cover art, so a book that you didn't like at all.
Kalina asks in the chat, do you have any breakdowns of some of your older work? We were just looking at your website. Do you do breakdowns online?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of YouTube video about my, but they were mostly without any VR. So I have some with VR, some with 3D, just the latest one. But all the others ones, just for my basic in Photoshop, I've got tons of those.
Sweet. Thank you.
I see that there's a making of section on your website. Is that?
Yeah, you can go for it and just see. And I released a book named Coverama some years ago, and for the promotion of the book, I've done a lot of live real cover. The full process was done live. It was just like having my clients on my bike watching me paint. So Hopefully it's over now, but you can always see all the videos there.
And you have a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, it's pretty cool right now, but I still have some. And I'm mostly on Facebook, on EMAG. I've got a lot of stuff on EMAG, just because it's easier for me to not do anything about it.
I love it.
Well, thank you for your question, Kalina, and to everyone in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Diddy Game Boy, what up? Trey Trimble, I saw is there. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Of course, this is a live chat, so please throw in your questions here for Marc. We're super lucky to have Marc here with us, one of the great illustrators. Please, as you have him, I know it's August, as Gooch had said, but chime in here with us. Marc, so do you do a lot? Are you exclusively painting these days in Oculus, in VR?
No. I try to adjust depending on the subject. Sometimes the VR, I don't have the choice. It's a little bit too complicated for me to model because I'm not. I could model it, but it would take me a lot of time. So I try to be as fast as possible every time.
Yeah.
For example, some 1 month ago, I tried to do a contest on DeviantArt. It was about a boat, a mecha. I tried to find it. So I made it in full in VR and just with this one. This one. So I made it in full VR, the boat, and then just use a photo of my town just as a background. This is my wife and my kids just there. And this one, this little guy there was. It took me 30 minutes to do in VR.
Whoa,
amazing! Wow.
So that's why I'm using it, because it's super fast. You don't have, for example, any gizmo to manipulate the different object when you do bashing or stuff. You just rotate your wrist, and you just place it with the correct scale with the two hands. So you don't have no limitation. You can,
That's amazing.
For example, something I just began to do with the kit bash. I'm taking the models and I'm importing them as stems into Oculus. So basically what I can do is just use them as stems, and you don't, super fast, you don't have any more, you lose the texture, you lose everything, but you can still use them just as raw models. And this way you can place everything in a few minutes, super fast. You can compare it with a real 3D because you have to place it and use displacement and then rotation and then scale. You have to there. It's just in one movement you can do the whole thing.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I've always wanted to play with our kits in VR. I haven't had a chance to yet, but that's.
But I think there's already model in VR. I've not tested yet, but I know it's already in VR. So maybe it would be easier to use it model. I will try one day, because if you can use the both of the world, it's a little bit more sharp on 3ds Max or Maya or C4D just to place objects. But if you can make the fast part first and then use the 3D part, the traditional one, yeah, it could be cool.
When my other question, when you're painting, back to kind of Rome, when you're painting, it seems like you're just going right at it with the brush on top. But it also looks like you have a ton of layers in your PSD. Do you separate out the model into multiple layers so you can focus in on certain aspects like a foreground, midground, background, or do you just go all on top with paint?
Oh, I spent years to just force myself to paint on one layer only, just to be able to not rely on everything, and this way you get to repaint a lot of things, and then you get better. And now I've stopped doing that because it's stupid, so don't do that, people. And I try just to separate the characters, the foregrounds, and the different layers in the composition. That's all I'm using. And then I've got my different. For example, for this one, I worked very dirty. When I'm working for movies, for example, I try to be as rigorous as possible. So I try to separate everything, make the effects by layers into the composition. So I try to be as easy to manipulate later on as possible. For movies, you have a lot of changes that you have to do sometimes. So it's super important to be as flexible as possible. For illustrations, most of the time you have a lot of freedom, so you can do how you prefer. So sometimes I just have 3 layers for an illustration, and then at the same time I'm working on a concept art for a movie, then I have 100 layers. It depends, really. All of those are just a tool. So the better you are with your tool, then the better you have the resources, the library of models, then the faster you're gonna be, and the more interesting you'll have. The jobs will be more interesting. That's
I feel like trying to work in one layer, even if it's just for personal work or practice, it helps you get rid of that kind of the tyranny of Control Z. And that option to always go back, like make a decision and move forward. Like the first guy who ever taught me to use a Wacom tablet, who was a really amazing speed painter, his rule whenever you got stuck was to merge and move on. Like make your decisions, move forward, as opposed to getting stuck in the, should I go back and try something different, or go back. It forces you, like in the traditional mediums, to like make a decision and keep pushing things further and further forward.
Exactly, and this way also you work far more on the composition, because if you don't modify your layers, you never change the silhouette. So if you don't change the silhouette, then you don't change the composition, and you can't make the picture better, because the main part is the composition. If you do it right, if it looks good from a small view, it's gonna look better at the end. If it doesn't look good at the beginning, it's over. So just working with as few layers as possible, you can modify for far more easy. It's far more easier to modify your picture. But it's cool to have several layers, because then you can create more details, and it's better. But you have to understand what are the danger of using too many layers, and what are the danger of using not enough ones. It's just know your tools. And
Marc, can we see how you built up this painting kind of from the base render and layers, that kind of see your thought process as you were working through it?
Okay, I will try to check if everything is in the correct order, because sometimes it can be messy. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, this is pretty it. The first thing I always start with is putting a sky. Yeah. I put a sky first, and then as you can see, this is my different layers. I separated into 3 different parts, just to be able to. Okay. As you can see, it was kind of a messy process, because I was scanning in a hurry. So you can see the texture of the rocks there. Just not on the good layer, but anyway. So first, I try to work on the composition. Then I adjust it to make it a little bit more far. And I work on the lighting first, just to have the correct mood. But I try to use the effects in Photoshop as much as possible, just not to destroy anything with every little step that I'm making. Then I correct things, because, for example, this one, the 3D was not cool. It was not showing this part of the gate. Then, and I try to just little step after little step. This one, I'm pretty sure I've added it later on. This one too. I've added some people with my people brush. and then I add all the trees. Every time you just you make a clip with a tree, I keep it on a library. So it's cool to have a 3D model library and then a tree library, already cut out the trees, just to add some life into, just to separate the different steps to make it more interesting and more easy to read. There are the trees. Some of the trees is just the Photoshop tree, the basic Photoshop tree. You know it?
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
The very basic one. Just create one. I'm gonna make a tree just for you because not everyone knows it, so it's pretty important to. Maybe my computer is not. You can choose your. There it is. It's beautiful. So you have to be as lazy as possible just to be fast.
Well, those little pops of green bring so much, I feel, realism into your painting. As opposed to just being like mountains and rocks, those little like pieces of landscaping hinted so much more, I feel like.
And they help the scale overall too. Just they really help to understand the distance and how big these buildings are.
Exactly. It's super important to, when you're outside and you, for example, there's a certain mood, for example, it's raining, I try to always look around me and see what are the little elements just like that adds a lot of life around me, because sometimes in 3D render you can have something, the feeling of that it's hollow, that it's empty. So just those small effects like water on the ground that make it reflective, just some birds flying in the sky, just some vegetation, for example, or dirt when you're making a town. It's very important to have those little small effects. And then, and this is the first one. It's done in just 1 minute. No. Yep. Okay, no, I don't have the. Oh yeah, this is my first render. So I just made it with my random people I had in Modo. I think those come from Modo. Let me check because I don't remember. I made it quite fast.
People are freaking out about the tree in the chat. I guess it's an unknown thing.
I think that was unknown.
It's a filter, render, and then tree. It's literally tree.
Yeah. But that's funny because every time I'm making a demo or something like that, people are always trying to grasp all the small shortcuts in Photoshop. But yeah, that's funny because it's really the least important thing that will be said in the talk right now. No, just trying. What size is the brush? What kind of shortcut does he have? And I think sometimes it's just. I've asked Craig Mullins once what was his secret to have lighting so perfect that because he always have a really perfect lightings in all his speed paintings and in all his pictures. And he told me everywhere he goes, he looks around him and he just tried to calculate in his own head. All the light travels, and he just compare it what would be the picture he would have made and the picture he was seeing. So he was doing that all the time. He was not using references at all. And when at the same event, the people at his conferences were trying to know what buttons he was pushing in Photoshop. So it's cool to know the shortcuts, some shortcuts, but they are really useless compared to the important stuff, I would say. And I don't remember if this one is still in the final picture. I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, I think I removed it.
It's crazy. I see so much similarities in your work and Craig Mullins' work. It's especially with the lighting. It's cool to know that he's someone whose work you look at too.
Oh yeah,
Because
it's a big reference. But I think it's a big reference for so many artists. He's one of the he created the past for so many of us. So it's pretty normal, but yeah.
I also feel like a lot of those like small little tricks and stuff like that, when you use them, and they are just like small tricks, they're like a small part of the tool set that any artist brings to the table. But when you use them, you're like, oh, it's a small thing, but that actually is, I understand why it's important.
I've got the very same reaction every time I see someone doing a magic trick. I want to know it, and I will use it. So I'm not saying people it's bad. I'm saying just I know what. For example, working the composition will make you far more better than just knowing all the small tricks. That's my only point there. Because composition, it's just like what you were saying. What I love in all the kits, they are really coherent, right? So basically, you can use all the models together and have something at the end that even if you make bad composition, the model helps you a lot because they are so close together that they are already creating something uniform. So it's not the case for all models. So it's pretty cool to check that. But it's part of the composition process, and the composition process is the bone, the spinal bone of the picture.
Because I think what you've done with the trees now is you've created lines that are pointing down to the people and also breaking up that city in the background. It's not about how to create a tree using a filter. It's about when to use the tree and how to use them. I agree that like knowing the tools may speed you up, but to understand when and where to use those tools is really how you end up becoming a better artist over time.
I remember my first introduction to matte painters was the Dylan Cole videos on Gnomon.
I have those.
And I remember watching them, and you guys were talking earlier about scribbles, and I remember watching them and be like, he can't even draw. He's just, I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. I opened up Photoshop, like 2 minutes later, I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because as far as like the craft of like line quality, like yes, Dylan Cole's like very scratchy, but he knows where to put the scratches and in what color and value.
Exactly.
And you just look at him doing, you're like, nope, whole different plane. It's not necessarily like fine motor drawing skills. It's the eye or the understanding of composition and light and color that he's just got to the moon and back.
Yeah, the best artists I think are the ones who make the best at anything. If you're a great, motorcycle rider, you're the one who's out there who makes it look easy, that makes everyone go, I can do what he can do.
Exactly. When it looks easy, then it's there's a lot of quality there.
Yeah, a lot of mastery behind it if someone can make it look that approachable.
Sure, yeah.
Did you find this? I know this is kind of going back in the process, but did you find this composition in 3D? Did you explore like multiple compositions, or did you find this and go, this is the one, and you got it right away and just move forward with it?
I just knew that I wanted to have that kind of composition to show all the models, because I didn't want to have that view from above. That kind of sometimes it can just make the building look smaller. I love it when it looks epic when you have to make your head up, to level up your head. Mm-hmm. So I like this kind of view. So I wanted mountains, and then for the composition to make it interesting to read, I wanted to create a curve. So it kind of it comes up naturally depending on the subject. For example, if you want something epic, you wanted to see it from underneath. Yeah, from there. And then I try to look in 3D which element would I need to make it interesting, and try to work the composition with this. So, but as you can see, for example, it's 3 times the same mountains. At the very beginning, I just wanted to make flying mountains like that with the. But it was a little bit too crazy. It was not the point of the illustration, I think. So, but I'm a little bit, just slightly disappointed that I couldn't use this one with all the rest. I didn't find a correct way, and also I would have to make a full crowd there, and I didn't feel like it at the moment. Because a circus completely empty doesn't look very epic, so I just say no. Okay, let's do something else.
Now, to react to keep Kalina's comments in the chat, was it a conscious decision not to use muscle-bound Sparta warriors in the foreground?
Oh, yeah, because it just like you said before. When you say it was more historically accurate, I think that those muscle-bound people were just in the circus. You couldn't find them in the streets, or it would be maybe a dangerous situation there. Then, so I prefer to let them just there being killed. It's fine; it's their place, and letting just normal people just walking the streets, just to give more life.
I think that's a challenge to Kalina to see what she can do with some Spartans.
Oh. Yeah, always can. Yeah, it's cool something.
It is cool. The upward perspective on this really gives those like profile buildings up on the ridge like such a proud stance.
Yeah, exactly. And it looks a little bit like Roman or in Greece, for example, in Athens, you have exactly this position for the Parthenon, but it's I know it's Greek architecture, but it's kind of the same
very close.
Position. Yeah, very close. I try to, and sometimes it's cool to be inspired by what exists in reality, and you can make it bigger. So it's a cool thing. For example, when I'm making a castle, I always try to get as close as possible to the Mont Saint-Michel in France, which is a beautiful castle, or just an island. This one is a stunning place. So once something stunning already exists, you can be inspired by it and just try to make it bigger, or just for the extra touch. So it's more,
Do you have a dream project, Mark? If you could work on anything, is there a game or a movie or a franchise or a book or something that you'd love to work on more than anything?
Oh, Dune. I would love to work on the Dune movie. That's
Dune.
my Dune. Yeah. The next one that will be done by Denis Villeneuve. I think this one is going to be awesome. But yeah, I'm already working on the books, so it's already something cool for me. So sometimes just have to see the cool project just to your side, and I will enjoy it anyway. I'm pretty sure he's got already a cool team working on it.
That would be full circle. You've already accomplished Game of Thrones, where you started, with your initial kind of fan art first trials of things. Yeah. And if you get Dune, then you're just, I guess it's retirement time. I mean, that's where do you go from there?
This was one of my big disappointments at the beginning of my career, to just being illustrating my very favorite books at the beginning, because I knew I was not good enough at all. But it worked quite fine for me, but sometimes it's, it just, and the cover stays, maybe my career will last 50 years longer, and I will still have my very first cover that really they are not good at all. So you have to stick with what you've done. You have to accept that.
Can I ask, how much direction do you get on the covers?
It really depends on the client. These days I don't have much. I have some writers that I work with sometimes that ask every single little details, and I don't have any choice at all. But it's pretty rare, to be honest. Sometimes I don't have any direction, do what you want, and it's done, and that's all.
So it's all across the board.
Yeah, exactly. But generally speaking, we have much more freedom doing cover arts than doing concept art for movie or video games, because you're making the end product, the final product. You're just making something finished, and just when you're working for movies or video games, you're just a part of a team. You're just a part of the process. You have to be. It's normal. You have to be usable.
Huh. Well, I'm curious, and I feel like this is something that we should make into a normal question for everyone who does a cover. What kit would you like to see that we haven't made yet?
Yeah, I already quite for example, this is my library in C4D. As you can see, I've already put the kit that you have, the Arabic kit badge there, the Art Deco. So I can use it on the when I use it when I need them. I just can take the models there and put it inside my scene, and boom, is there.
Awesome. Is that a plugin or is it built into C?
It's the basic. I don't know, something. Okay, I've made the whole thing disappear, but anyway. As you can see, I'm pretty good with 3D. Or maybe it was a little bit too heavy for my computer. It's possible. Yeah, it's the basic library in C4D, and you have the very same one in Modo. So I'm using this. You have the very same thing in VR. You can create your own library. So I just took all the models and the kit badge 3D that I have and put it in library. So I can use them super fast. Victorian one. I've not finished to do it. You just have to take every single pieces that you have with the kit and just add them to the library. And this way, it's faster to use than just copying, and for me at least.
Yeah.
That is way more efficient than mine. I think I want to use a factory. I'm going to merge the whole scene into my scene and then pick the one building in.
Okay, yeah, but I can't. I just can't with my computer. It's not possible. As you can see, I already fucked my whole thing. But same. So yeah.
So is there a style, an architecture style that you would want that we should go make? What should we go make for you?
Let me think. I don't know. I really don't know because right now I don't. You already made the Gothic one. It was kind of my thing first. Oh yeah, you know what you could do? It would be super interesting because you can make a kit just all about pirate ships. I would like to have some barracks with pirate ships, boats, and sails, and the whole thing accurate with some from Spanish ones, the soldiers. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have those terms in my English vocabulary, and the pirates one, just like the Pirate of the Caribbean. I would love that to be able to make good composition with all the boats and everything you get inside the boats is super interesting too.
Awesome. That's an amazing suggestion.
I think that's the first time we've heard pirate ships. I love it.
Yeah,
it is. I love it too.
Swashbuckler.
We have in the chat. We have a Blade Runner request, a Viking request, a sci-fi kit.
Yeah, sci-fi is so vast. You can do so many things with it. So yeah.
Sure.
Blade Runner is cool. It's already quite close to the Tokyo, the Neo Tokyo. It's pretty close, I think. Already.
Sci-fi is so much how you make it into sci-fi. You could do Art Deco and make that a sci-fi world, and like a lot of Dark City kind of has an Art Deco vibe to it, and that's like a sci-fi future dystopia.
And also, it's for me the kits are super interesting when you. It's something you don't have to design. When you're making sci-fi and you don't design it, it's a little a missed opportunity for me. But it's super cool to have the kit badge 3D to make something that is known and that you can rely on to design something, for example. Where it's a scene, it's an environment that you don't have to, there's no choice. You make it in the Victorian world. Oh, the kit is there. But the interesting part in sci-fi is to imagine something, to create it. Yeah. So then the kits are there to provide you tools to gain time on what's not important. For sci-fi, for me, it's the design that it's important, you know?
Yeah. And we want to create the pieces. Like, we don't want to give a full city that's all set up and ready to go. It's all about creating the building blocks so that artists can build their world. And I think sci-fi is really all about, you know, if you're going to create something uniquely sci-fi, it's about throwing a twist on a style that you might have seen in the past and doing something new and different with it and taking it further.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, Blade Runner had those great pyramids in there, and using Art Deco.
Yeah, exactly. They have Art Deco. They also have some small Victorian pieces from there and there.
Yeah, I think throwing like the Art Deco bridges in with, like, you know, Neo-Tokyo structures that go infinitely down with Utopia structures up top, you know, combining them can hopefully create some unique sci-fi. But I agree, sci-fi is all about what you make of it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I know we're running a little bit over on time. If there's, I know that Marc's super busy and has, I'm sure, a day full of painting to go on to. Do you guys have any other closing thoughts, Banks and Mike, or questions that you want to ask Marc?
Well, I have, how can people keep up with you, and where can they see you next, Marc? How can the chat follow you, and where are you putting your next attention?
Right now I'm working on several books, for example, Subterranean Press. There's a cool book called The Three-Body Problem. So I'm making a limited edition of it. And I'm working on several movies for NPC Los Angeles. So these ones, you will hear about them in something like 2 or 3 years. And I'm doing a lot of love cover art, so you can follow me on Facebook. But I will always or often use models from KB3D, so I will try to every time to quote KB so that you can see what I've done with different kits.
Yes,
that's awesome.
And
yeah, we'll post all your links here in the chat. And Marc, thank you again for coming on here. I've been a fan of your work for a really long time, and I love getting to chat with you and see your process.
Well, thank you very much for having me there. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. And yeah, take care, guys.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so very much. An awesome cover piece. Awesome cover piece.
Thank you, everyone in the chat, for joining us. That's out today, and we'll see you guys next week.
Hey, guys.
All right.
Guys, thanks so much.